This is overview video number 4 for our DLive 3500, and we're going to be specifically talking about channel inputs and the actual processing for those channels. And so most of our work is going to be on the left screen today, so I'm going to give you a view of that. And as the way that we get channels information to display on the screen is by using the select buttons that you'll see. These are the green buttons on any channel strip. And so today we're gonna look at the actual microphone that I'm talking on right now, which is the Headset 2 mic. And you're gonna see when I click select on that, here it's off. We just see a general view of that bank. When I on, we have all these features come up now. And so we're talking specifically about the Headset 2 mic. You can see my audio coming in there. And so the way that we adjust different parameters of that channel are by using these tabs at the top. Well, there's a couple of different ways. You have some, they call these widgets on the console, and to be honest, I'm still learning about how to set up these widgets and customize them, but they're kind of like a quick step to get to basic things like your gain, your high pass, low pass filters, and then over here you see these widgets, and they're actually controlled by these views right here, if you can see that. I'll use my other hand so I'm not obstructing your view. And you can also drag them with your finger and go to them. And these are, you can set these up to be anything. If you know you're going to be using your gate a lot on a specific channel, you would maybe have a widget there where it's quicker to get to it. So, but we can also use these tabs along the top. And so we have the bank, we have the overview of the actual channel. Again, we're on headset 1, so I can tell you some things about this just by looking at the channel. The preamp tells us where we're getting for this channel input, where it's coming from in terms of the stage box that it's plugged into. We can see if we're going to be using the preamp on the surface itself or at the stage box. We can see different things about the gain, whether we're using phantom power or not would happen right here, and we're not using phantom power 48 volts on this particular mic, so you see it's off. So you see some overviews about the preamp section. You can click on gain here, and you can use your encoder, which is just a little bit. If I zoom out a little bit, you'll be able to see the encoder, which is right there. And this is our encoder that we're going to use for any kind of parameter that doesn't have a side encoder or low encoder affecting it. So hopefully you can still see on that. So the way to manipulate, let's say the preamp section, is to click on the attribute that we want to change, and then we have this encoder here that will light up and be used. Now I'm going to go to another channel so I don't obstruct the level that we're talking about. Let's say I want to change the level of headset 1. I click on the gain there and I use my encoder, and then I can take that down to whatever level I want to use. So that's the preamp section. I'm going to go back to my headset mic so we can talk specifically about the audio that you're hearing. In filters is our EQs, and we are you looking at a high pass filter right now, which is allowing high frequencies to pass through this filter. So at the threshold that we've set, and again that's 100 hertz, you can either drag it with your finger, and that's a good place for a lot of vocal mics because after about 100 hertz for a guy voice, there's not a lot of frequency content that's worth having. And in fact, it's a risk to have it present because that's where you're kicking a mic stand or something like that, and you're getting these low thumps in a vocal channel that you didn't intend. And you have the option to set a low pass filter, which means only letting frequencies below that point through. We're not going to do that with a vocal because we do appreciate having that high frequency content for articulation and things like that. So that's our filter section, and that's really just high pass and low pass filters. You can get to them by clicking on one of these buttons as well. Then we have gates, which you know gates we use a lot for snare drums. We know that the idea of a gate is that any audio that is below the threshold results in closing the channel down. So things like a hi-hat or a tom mic that are only used once in a while, the idea is that that channel is not passing noise of other things when it's not intended to be in the mix. So we use gates on things like toms, hi-hats, maybe a noisy guitar instrument so that when it's not playing we don't hear the noise. We have the ability to insert specific effects directly into the signal chain of the channel. So if you wanted to use a specific compressor for a specific vocal or something like that, or a tube emulator for a guitar, that would happen as an insert. The PEQ is our equalization here, and you can see, and this is very much like on the Yamaha, except it's touch sensitive now. So you can either use the controls that are color coded to reach to be color coded and assigned to the parameters that you see, or you can literally just drag it. So as we talk about vocals, we're talking again about we already have the high pass filter happening that we saw. So let's go back to our EQ. Now we're doing a little notch out around 250 to 350, and that's some of that boxy low range. You probably hear it on the video right now. And then sometimes you need to address the 2K, 4K region. That's kind of the harshness and the consonant sounds. So but right now we're flat because we like the way this sounds, and then we see a little bump here around 8K, and that gives us some of the S's and the T's in our voice. So that's how we use EQ. And then we'll talk last about the compression. And so if you know compression, we could do obviously 2 videos on compression. But the idea is that you have a threshold point at which compression will begin. So any audio that goes past that point will be compression. So if I yell loud, hey, hey, you'll see gain reduction in the actual output section there. So we have a threshold, and then we have a ratio for how much we want audio to be changed once it passes the threshold. So in this sense, we're saying for every 3.3 decibels that goes beyond our threshold, we're going to only allow it to go 1 decibel. So you see this trajectory change. And we can change the threshold by either using our encoder, or we can actually grab on it ourselves. And then we have output gain that once we have squashed that signal a bit, we might want to send the gain louder to compensate for the attenuation that we've done. In this case, we're not doing that. And then you have attack and release times. Attack is what's going to allow, it's in milliseconds, so it's basically saying anything that happens in the first 4.6 milliseconds is not going to be compressed no matter what it is. And then beyond that, it'll be subject to compression. And that's because some transient attacks, like either your syllables or the transient attack of a symbol or something like that, we want that to be able to go in unaltered. And then the release time is that once the signal drives into compression and then it no longer needs compression, how long does it take to go back to normal, to reset essentially? And we're using a kind of a low mid range. We're saying 250 milliseconds. It's arbitrary. I mean, you can just listen and hear. Sometimes you can use it stylistically to be a long release for a really neat effect. Oftentimes you want a short release because you don't want to hear the compressor actually working. There's a button called Soft Knee here. And what that does is that you can see it just kind of makes a smoother contour between the point of the threshold. And so we're going to leave that off for now. We like how that sounds. So that gives you a little bit an idea of how to actually work through the channel strip. And you'll see here, even if you're not in the EQ section, you've got this widget down here that shows you your 4 bands of EQ. And so wherever you are, if you want to get to that really fast, it not only gets you to the EQ screen, but it gets you to that actual filter that you want to deal with and gives you a place to immediately start working with it. So I hope that helps you understand a little bit more. There's lots more to learn about it and how to use the controls. These encoders correspond to the widgets that you have on here, and the lights correspond. So if I want to change the depth of this gate in that widget, it's automatically right there. If I want to change the gain in that comp, the same button does it on that screen. So it's really a neat way to navigate through the console. And if you want to know more about that section, you can use your select button for these encoders to work.